Throughout most of my conscious life, I don't recall ever feeling like a normal person. In part, this is because somewhere along the road, I came to the realization that humans found safety in numbers. It was only really okay to do something as long as everyone else was doing that thing, but it didn't stop there. I found that there exists societal pressures urging you to follow the herd on new trends or popular opinions until each poor sap is identical to the last, just like cookie-cutter people. The narrow-mindedness of this social construct continues to baffle me today. How can people be so content with making decisions based not on their own happiness, but on what people surrounding them might think? Finally, I found a name for this phenomenon: conformity. And it terrified me. More than that, the thought of being just like everybody else haunted me. It haunted me because the life I led was unique, and I didn't want it any other way, even if that meant I would have to bear it alone. Growing up here on campus has impacted my life in an unimaginable amount of ways over the years. From day-to-day living all the way to how I perceive the world around me, Brooks School has played a role. Above all else, though, this school has presented me with countless opportunities to travel the globe, an offer I've yet to refuse. I've spent weeks in tropical rainforests and seen the sunrise from the Great Wall. The life I live is very much so here today and gone tomorrow. I refer to it as a semi-nomadic lifestyle. I'm rarely home when I have the choice, and even when I am home, my mind is almost always somewhere else. I find it hard to be enthusiastic about everyday life around here. Abiding by the strict, stagnant schedule obliterates my preferred way of life. A predictable life is a boring one, after all. In the beginning, traveling to new and exotic places was just something I did, but by now, it's taken over a major part of my personality. These days, I crave adventure as humans crave companionship, or as my generation craves validation. Last year, I was lucky enough to cross paths with a person who shared the same love for travel as I did. He was a slightly taller Hungarian exchange student with enormous dreadlocks and some hair on his chin, and the first time I saw him, I think I actually pointed and said, "That's my kind of person." It was a joke in the moment, but as I got to know him, I came to realize that I was right. He was exactly my type of person. And here I was thinking I was all alone. We became close over Daniel's 10 weeks here in the States, picking each other's brains as I helped him navigate Brooks's uncharted seas. It was obvious when he first arrived that he was out of his comfort zone here, a feeling I know all too well myself. Life goes on, though, and things seem to have a funny way of falling into place. Daniel found his groove, and I began to see him less daily, although free periods were habitually spent playing Mario Kart in Chase House. He was a delightful addition to my tiny Brooks family, but we could both sense his departure creeping up. With a week or so left in America, Daniel turned to me and said, "Jake, come to Hungary on exchange. I've seen your world, now it's time for you to see mine." He left Brooks for home in November, and by March I was on a flight to Budapest. My flight wasn't direct, but for some reason I didn't seem to mind. While awaiting my connection in Amsterdam, I was approached by a bitter-looking older gentleman who had but one question. "I see from your sweatshirt you go to Brooks," he snarled. I was just wondering, do you know Dusty Richards? This sent a chill down my spine. Other than that, my day was business as usual, consisting of 3 airports, 2 flights, and an unrelenting smile across my face. God, was it a good feeling to be back in action. For me, being in the same place for too long now comes with a distinct feeling of my life being wasted away. And the reality of it is, I've been tied to Brooks for 18 years. If you ask me, that's far too long. I spent my first couple days in Hungary adjusting to the culture and catching up with Daniel, who is now my host brother, meaning I would be living with him and his family in their 10th-story flat overlooking Szeged, the Sun City. This was the best-case scenario he and I had discussed while plotting my exchange, and somehow we managed to pull it off. I can't begin to tell you how much of a difference this made. He would get to return the favor and orient me to his way of life as I did for him months ago. Daniel's brother was away at university, so I took his bed in their shared room. The actual room itself was green, the color of life. The walls were covered with Sharpie. It was mostly hand-drawn artwork straight from the soul, or maybe just a place of boredom, and then, in huge letters above his bed, "Do you know where you are?" And I did. I was in a place completely foreign to me, yet, at the same time, I was home. For the first time in a while, I was content. Weekdays over there were spent in school, but most nights were spent out in the city meeting up with Daniel's friends, who were all determined to show me a wild time. Now, I won't share any specifics with you, just know that they succeeded. My favorite times, however, were the weekends, because they were spent venturing out into the world even further. We spent 2 nights in a hostel in the heart of Vienna that will forever stick with me. The first night was spent lounging in the hostel's bar, where it was 90s jams night. We met another kindred spirit. She was local and spoke little English, yet still elegantly belted out all the words to Gangster's Paradise and Britney Spears' Baby One More Time. And I sang along, coming to appreciate music as the universal language that it truly is. Around 1 a.m., the music faded out and we got to talking. We spoke for I don't know how long, interrupted only by the language barrier. When this was the case, Daniel, without looking up from the cigarette he was rolling, would happily provide translation. For the whole trip, he had acted as my guide, my personal linguist. Where I only knew my native language, he knew English, Hungarian, German, and Italian with basic fluency. This never ceased to amaze me. I tend to be lonely by nature, which is something not a lot of you may know about me. I love to meet new people simply for the fact that every single person on this earth knows something you don't, and that captivates me. But I can never seem to make lasting relationships with the majority of the people I encounter. Daniel and I lived together for 5 weeks, inseparable most of the time, and neither of us drove the other insane. Part of me thinks this is due to the fact that we were both already there, but that's not the point. The point is we never fought once. On the contrary, after a week or so, we began to develop the type of chemistry you find only with family. He had become my host brother, minus the host. I still don't fully understand how 2 people from such different places could be so similar, but I'm certainly not complaining. I quickly deemed him my Hungarian counterpart and continued on with my life, a little happier now knowing that there's at least one person out there that's like me. I, along with the rest of the senior class, am at what is called a pivotal point in life. There has never before been a time where I've had the chance to make so many major life decisions for myself. This feeling is unique, bizarre, a combination of overwhelming stress and liberating freedom fighting for the last word, all while keeping in mind that my word is final. Some days, the stress consumes me. I have to remind myself this is not something I'm exempt to. Then I remind myself that the ends justify the means, and in the end I'll be free to do what I want to do. By this point, you may be asking yourself, what does he want to do? As a senior, this is a question I'm often asked these days. But in reality, what answer do you expect me to give? There is no one answer to that question. At least, if you ask me, there shouldn't be. Why would I put a limit on myself? Even more so, why would anyone? Thank you.